Hello, wizards, witches, and everyone in between. My name is Emma, and today I will be doing my March wrap-up. So March was a good reading month for me. I read 15 books, so I upped my game from February. And it's really weird because I was looking back on my Goodreads, and like the first 3 books I read in March, it feels like I've read them like last year. This month has been so long when I think of it in terms of like what book I was reading at what time in March. March went on forever. Today is March 31st, so we're finally moving into April. April's my birth month, so I'm very excited. So the first book I read in the month of March was When Dimple Met Rishi, and I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. It took me longer to read than it should have, and that's honestly because I just found the plot really predictable. It was just kind of like your average contemporary, to me anyway, because I'm not a huge fan of contemporaries. It was enjoyable. I liked parts of it. It was very funny. Dimple's really cool character, but I'd never reread it. It was just so like average to me, so 3 out of 5 stars. The second book I read was The Last Star by Yancey. This is the 3rd and final book in the 5th Wave trilogy, and I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. It was better than The Infinite Sea. I don't like the way this ended. It did feel a little bit more like the first book, The 5th Wave, which I liked because if you remember from last month's wrap-up, that was like my main issue I had with The Infinite Sea, was it felt like a completely different story. So this did have some of those same vibes as The 5th Wave, but I just don't really like what happened to any of the characters, and I honestly think the prologue for this book was better than the book itself. Overall though, I'm still really glad that I finally finished this series because I read The 5th Wave like over 5 years ago, and it took me until just this month to finally wrap it all up and know how it ends. So the next book I read was A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. This is the 2nd book in the Ember in the Ashes series. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either, and I think maybe it would have been a 4-star read for me if I had read it like right after An Ember in the Ashes, although I did still remember what happened. I just think maybe I wasn't in the mood for it. I don't know. I can't remember when exactly I started this, but I started it like a year ago, and it was one of those ones that like I put down to pick something else up and I never got around to it. So in March I restarted it and was like, okay, you know, it's been on my currently reading on Goodreads for over a year, and I really liked the first one, and I just need to buckle down and like read 100 pages a day and get through it. So that's kind of the mindset I went in with for this, so that's probably not the best way to read something, but I gave it 3 out of 5. I enjoyed it. I really like all the characters, and I'm really excited to read the 3rd one. So next I read The Messenger by Lois Lowry. Gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it more than the 2nd book, which was Gathering Blue. This had a lot of the characters from Gathering Blue in it, and it also had a couple from The Giver, which is like what I was hoping Gathering Blue would have. So I enjoyed it. It just felt really slow, and the characters from The Giver were the ones I was really interested in, and they were just kind of hinted at in this one, so I was just kind of waiting to get to the 4th one. So next I read the 4th one, called Sun by Lois Lowry. This one I gave 3 stars. It was definitely, in my opinion, I think you could read, like this one was worth reading. So if I could redo everything, I would read The Giver and then just read this one, because this one, like the majority of the main characters in this one are from The Giver. Jonas is in this, Gabe is in this, and they're older, and it's just interesting to see what happened after the end of The Giver. If you've read that, you know that it's kind of like open-ended. So I really enjoyed this, and if you're a fan of The Giver, I would recommend picking this up, but I honestly think you can skip the middle two or just read summaries of them, because they really weren't that great, in my opinion. Next, I read Stalking Jack the Ripper by Kerri Maniscalco. I gave this 2.5 stars. It was very conflicting because for me, honestly, at the very, very beginning, I was like, yes, I'm into this. And then it got slower and slower and slower. And I buddy read this with Sarah from Simply Sarah. I will link her channel below. But we were both like, mostly all of our discussions about this book were like, I hope the next couple chapters pick up. I hope it gets more interesting. And I feel like the last 50 pages was interesting. And the first like 25 pages were interesting. And that's it. So 2.5 stars. It was good. I don't think I'd ever reread it. I'm just gonna keep it on my shelf for now just because it's pretty, but I am actually gonna continue on with Hunting Prince Dracula, which may seem kind of strange, but I just want to give it another try. I really like this idea, so we'll see. I will DNF Hunting Prince Dracula though if by like page 100 I'm not feeling it, because I don't want to waste my time with a whole nother book like this, because part of me wishes I would have DNF'd this, but then at the end I'm like, I am sort of glad I read it, but I would never reread it again. It's very... My feelings are very complicated. So next on Scribd, I listened to Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I give this 4 stars. I enjoyed it. Part of me feels like I would have given like a 4.5 if I had physically read it, just because there were some flashback scenes that were very confusing sometimes to listen to, depending on like when in the audiobook I would leave off. So this book takes place like after this, well, before and after, but mainly after this huge like outbreak of this illness sweeps the country and there's barely anyone left really. There's a lot of interesting discussions about survival, about if we should tell like the kids who were born post illness breakout about like the past, where when we had electricity and we had TV and we had all that kind of stuff, if it's good for them to know the past or if it would make them sad knowing that they don't have those things anymore. So I don't know if this makes any sense, but it's really, really good. I did enjoy the writing and I really liked what the author was trying to say. I just think I went into it thinking it would be more of like a survival thing than it was, but I would definitely recommend this. I think it's a great, for people who don't read adult fiction that often, this and kind of want to get into it, I think this is a very good option for that. Alright, next up is a super hyped book. I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I buddy read this with Stephanie from Nefa Entertainment. I will link her channel down below. Everyone and their mother is talking about this book. I liked it. Don't think it's a 5-star read. I rated it 4 stars. I think it's a little overhyped, but I mean, it was good. I enjoyed my time reading it. You guys already know what this is about. The reason it's 4 stars for me instead of 5. What's even her name? Monique. The woman who's interviewing Evelyn. I felt like she wasn't really a well-developed character. At the beginning I was like, well, maybe she doesn't need to be because it's about Evelyn's story, right? And she's just kind of there as a plot device to like have us know what's happening with Evelyn. But towards the end, like Stephanie and I were both like, okay, there's gonna be a huge plot twist, because this isn't a spoiler, but like in here, like Evelyn keeps saying, like, after, you know, once I tell you the end of my story, like, you're gonna hate me. And so we're waiting, and we're like brainstorming all these things of like, what is she possibly gonna do that's gonna be like this bad that Monique is gonna hate her. And then when that whole like the plot twist finally came, I was so underwhelmed. To me, it wasn't that impactful. It wasn't worth like hyping up the like every chapter, like waiting for like what's it gonna be. The nature of the plot twist I feel like would have been better if we had had more information and character development of Monique. So that's why I dropped it down a star, but other than that, like the actual writing, Evelyn's life, like fascinating, completely fascinating. Evelyn is like, I love her. She's definitely a Slytherin. She does what she wants to do. She's unapologetic of herself, and it's honestly really inspiring, even though she also is a terrible person. It's very conflicting. Like, are you supposed to like her? Are you supposed to hate her? It's very cool that way. So next on Scribd, I listened to Hurry Down Sunshine by Michael Greenberg. This is a book I've had on my TBR shelf probably since 2014. I went through a period where right after I decided to make my psychology minor a psychology major, I read probably 15 books kind of like this at that time, and then I just kind of stopped because I read most of the ones I'd wanted to. So anyway, this has been floating around for like 5 or 6 years. I've moved 3 times and have brought it with me. Like, the effort to keep this book on my bookshelf has been real, and it sucks because I gave this 1 star. And I very rarely give anything 1 star because usually if it's 1 star, I don't even finish it. I think the only reason I finished this was because it was an audiobook, so I didn't physically have to like sit down and read this. I think if that was the case, I wouldn't have finished it. Oh my god. Okay, so this is written, it's a dad writing this about his daughter's story with psychosis and what her diagnosis ended up being, and it was just like 80% of this book was him talking about his brother who has mental illness, which is fine, but that's not about your daughter, and that's what this book is about. And then it was just like about his marriage and just all this weird stuff, and he's like weirdly judgmental about just other people, and he has like this weird, like the way he described towards the end his daughter's psychiatrist was just really weird. Like, he was paying too much attention to like the mannerisms and the clothing that this psychiatrist wore and her German accent, and I'm like, I was getting like some really hardcore creepy vibes. Oh my god, like, don't. Okay, next I was at Barnes & Noble studying like a week ago, and I decided to just browse around as one does, and I decided to buy Shatter Me. And this book came out when I was in high school, and I remember seeing it, the original cover with like this like brunette teenage girl in like a weird white dress, because back then like everything had to have a like an actual picture of an actual person on the cover. I much prefer these. I really like this weird eye. So I was like, you know what, it's $10, and it's just always been one of those series that I was like, maybe. If any of you don't know, you probably all know, but this book is about a girl named Juliet who, she has like a weird kind of power where people can't touch her or else she hurts them, and that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I knew going into it, and it really honestly made it more enjoyable. I don't know how I managed to go 8 years without being spoiled for anything in this series, but I'm very proud of myself for that. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's such a quick read. I really liked the writing style with like the sentences crossed out and her journal, and it was just very descriptive. So the back of Shatter Me had the Destroy Me novella, which is like Shatter Me book 1.5, which is from Warner's perspective. And typically, like, series that have novellas, I'm not gonna go out of my way to read them because usually they're not like necessary. And this one to me felt incredibly necessary because in the first book, you think, or at least I thought very negatively towards Warner, and then like this novella like lets you see things through his perspective, which I feel like is imperative before you read book 2. So I'm really glad it was in the back of that. I gave it 3 stars just because, I mean, I don't super care about Warner, but it was nice to know more about him before going into the second book, so it was a solid 3 stars. Alright, so the last book that I listened to on Scribd this month was Ghost Boy by Martin Pistorius, The Miraculous Escape of a Misdiagnosed Boy Trapped Inside His Own Body. This is another one, I think like Hurry Down Sunshine, that I've had for a really long time. I gave this 4 stars. I loved it. I really don't know why I waited this long to read it. It's hard to rate things like this because, like, who am I to... It's like I'm rating his subjective experience of being trapped in his body, and so it's like my rating, I can't rate his personal life, so I just kind of went off of my enjoyment level and just the writing, I guess. So like I said, it's just I feel very weird rating books like this. Apparently not Hurry Down Sunshine. I don't have a problem rating that, even though that's, I guess, kind of similar, but this was so good. Honestly, it's one of those books that really makes you think about your life and how lucky, like, I am to not be trapped inside my body, to be able to do things, to be able to talk to people, and it just reminds me not to take my physical health for granted. So I really enjoyed this. I definitely recommend this to people. The audiobook was really good. The guy who read it did a really, really good job, and it's just so inspiring to see the transformation that this guy has gone through to get to where he is today, and it's good stuff. Alright, next I read Unravel Me, which is book 2. Gave this 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't love it as much as the first one, just because I feel like it was the same length as the first one, but not that much really happened, which I feel like is always the case in second books, regardless of whether like it's a trilogy or not. So I gave this 3 stars, but still, I mean, I can't really talk about it because it's a sequel, but I liked it for all the reasons I liked the first one. I just dropped it a star because, like, once I finished it, I was like, wow, what really happened though? I'm so obsessed with these covers though, oh my god. Okay, next I read Fracture Me, which is the Shatter Me novel 2.5, which is the novella between the second book and the third book. I figured I had to read this because the 1.5 novella I felt like was so crucial to read that I was like, I better read this one before I read the third book. And sure enough, Scribd had like an ebook of it. So I read that on my phone, first time ever reading anything on my phone. 0 out of 10, would not recommend. I hate reading stuff on my phone, but it was only like a 60-page novella, so it's fine.
I'm fine! Totally fine! I don't know why it's coming out all loud and squeaky, because really, I'm fine.
I gave it 3 stars. It was from Adam's perspective. It just kind of confirmed how I feel about Adam, which I don't feel that great towards Adam. But it was interesting. I definitely think it's like a 2.5, but I just gave it 3 stars. Just because the first, like, 20 pages of it was a scene that happened in book 2, but from his perspective, but Juliet was there. So we already got her perspective of that scene, and we heard the dialogue from the other characters in that scene already, and then it's like Adam is listening to this dialogue again, so we just read the same dialogue again, and I'm like, have we not already been here? Have we not already done this? So that just seemed kind of weird, but then towards the end, it's like you get to know what happens to the people who weren't with the main character at the end of book 2, which is great. And once again, like, kind of crucial. So why wasn't this novella at the end of book 2? Why did I have to get lucky and find it online? I don't get it, but I enjoyed it. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, today is March 31st. I started Ignite Me yesterday. This is book 3, and I am planning on finishing it today. I just wanted to record while the sun's still out today because I have about 3 hours of this book left. So I'm definitely going to be able to finish it today. This would be my 15th book. So I will probably insert a clip of me talking a little bit about it once I am done reading it. Hey guys, so it is Monday night at 11:40 with 20 minutes to spare. I managed to finish reading Ignite Me and I really liked it. I'm gonna give it 4 stars on Goodreads. I thought it was a great conclusion. Like, I know that the series does continue on, but I can tell, like, obviously when this one was written it wasn't going to continue on, and I really like the way that it ended. I really love James and Kenji, but James, like, if I had to have a little brother, I'd want him to be James. Like, he's so cute. And I finally decided to underline a couple quotes that I like in this, which is a big deal for me because I don't usually underline things. So there you have it. I will leave all my social media linked below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up, and I hope you guys are doing well, and I will talk to you later. Bye! I just did my thumbnail. My arms are so tired.